Welcome to our webinar focused on delivering a service merchandise experience. I'm Transportation Insight Vice President of Supply Chain Consulting, John Richardson, and I appreciate y'all joining us today. I've spent more than 20 years helping companies improve their supply chain performance. And from the time I bought my sound design, clock, radio, phone at Service Merchandise, I've been intrigued with the way the retail giant mastered its supply chain. I'm excited to talk with one of the company's founders and its CEO. For those of you who may not be familiar with Service Merchandise, it was founded in 1934 as a five and dime and then grew to over $4 billion in revenue with 413 stores. It was a leading catalog showroom retailer with a unique shopping concept. There was limited inventory on the floor, and guests would submit orders to the back room where their products would then be delivered to them via conveyor. With the rise of big box retailers and the I want it now mentality, Service Merchandise closed its last store in 2002. However, with the emergence of shopping online, our modern day catalog, retailers face increasing needs to quickly fulfill customer orders, whether in-store, online, curbside, however the customer can get it. The innovations implemented by Service Merchandise over 50 years ago have lessons that are still applicable today. And I'm very pleased and honored to include Service Merchandise founder and CEO Raymond Zimmerman. Thank you for joining us today, Raymond.
Thank you for having me, and good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you are.
So let's just get this thing kicked off. So Service Merchandise had a unique operating concept where you had limited stock on the floor and fulfilled both catalog and walk-in from the back of the store. Why'd you employ that particular model?
Well, when we first went into the catalog business, having come out of the wholesale business, the only thing we knew was to bulk it out on the floor. And we shared the printing of a catalog with a company out of Richmond, Virginia, Best Products, with which we were very friendly. And they had designed this system of one on the floor and sending the order to the back for it to come down to the conveyor belt. So the more we studied that operation, the more we felt that that's where we ought to go. So we took our original store. I think we had 5 at the time when we started switching over, and we made our original store a clipboard. Luckily, it was a multi-story building, so it was easy to have the conveyor belt just come through the floor. And we found that the minute we went from the self-service operation vis-a-vis the discounted drugstores, et cetera, to the clipboard, that our sales climbed significantly, and our labor costs went down significantly because we weren't having to stock the floor, keep it full, and just as important, our inventory investment went down because we didn't have to fill shelves. We didn't have to have 12 of an item in the store to sell 5 a month. So all that worked in our favor, that we could deliver the lowest price and the best service to our customer.
So really what you're kind of saying is it was kind of a way to consolidate all that inventory, have people that were really specialized in, picking the orders, and then having kind of different folks that were actually front of the house taking care of the customer. And so if I heard you right, you said it really provided the best customer experience for your clients.
Exactly, that we could devote more attention to the customer in the front. But the interesting part of this, since we sent a catalog to virtually anyone who asked for one, or anybody we could find, whether it was a group of people. When we first went to the catalog business, I used to spend the weekends traveling to small towns around Nashville to pick up telephone books. And our mailing list was created from those phone books to offices and places where there were multiple people. Then we started mailing the catalogs to the individuals. So actually, when the customer came in, they really knew what they wanted, and we never had a significant amount of complaints that there's nobody here to help me. Sometimes we got complaints that the people on the floor wouldn't let me alone. I know what I want, because our customer really had come in pre-shopped. They knew what they want, and that's why it was so easy for them just to write it down. And then eventually, when we went to the Silent Sam operation, where they could key it into the computer and pay for it, they knew what they want. Boom, they ordered it, and away we went. So the catalog really was our salesperson on the floor. Not that we didn't have people on the floor, but we didn't have as many as you would normally have, because they weren't stocking shelves. They were only there to straighten and keep the customer happy, or to answer any questions the customer may have.
Yes, so I guess really the the online, the internet is today's catalog. And
Exactly. Right. So you take all the online people, unless you've seen it in another store, you don't know what it is until you get it. You think you know what it is, but it could be different than what the picture shows, or at least a different perception than the perception you had from looking at the picture. That's why they have so many returns.
yeah, so when we were talking yesterday, you were mentioning about having a drive-through option. As I think about everything that's gone on with COVID, and how retailers have had to adjust to either going to e-commerce when they were traditionally in store, or going to curbside delivery. Sounds like you kind of had a lot of those things already figured out back then.
We did it all. We did every bit. We even had the curbside service back in the 80s. We had at our Hickory Hollow Nashville store, we had Mr. Service. And this was at the time our latest prototype. And some of our people said, we ought to have pickup where the customer can order, rather than have to come into the store, just drive up and pick it. So we put this speaker in the middle of the parking lot. That was Mr. Service. And you went up and either ordered what you wanted there, or told them who you were, and then you drove around and we handed you the merchandise through a window, or there was a door there, they could bring it out and put it in the car if it was something big. So we had the online ordering, the mail order. We had the in-store, we had the curbside pickup, whatever it was out there, we had years and years ago. So I don't say that we created or invented all these things, but we were doing all these things. You could stand, we developed systems so that you could stand in one store. If you had a child at college, say they were at the University of Texas in Austin, and you lived in Atlanta, you could tell them to go to the Austin store, and you could order something at 12:02 and tell them that your daughter that order is coming down the conveyor belt, and here's the order number. So you could key the order in the Atlanta store, it would come down the belt in Austin, Texas, and away you went. Or you could call in and we would have it ready, they could come pick up. We were doing all of those things. We were really, we spent a lot of time, effort, and dollars on systems that a lot of people are now using today.
Well, so you're talking about the systems and everything, and how those really enabled you to be able to execute on a lot of these different options. You had to have had some really good visibility into your inventory to be able to do that.
Well, if the original store, when you came in, the original clipboard store, we called them, where there was one of each on display. And on our display tag for the customer, the fact tag, we had both the manufacturer's suggested list price and the price we were selling it to the customer for. So the customer actually wrote down their own price. And early on, we put a tag on every bin in the warehouse of what the price was. And then we found there was no sense in doing that because the customer was honest. The few ripoffs we got didn't justify the time it took to put the tags up and move them, if the item moved or if the price changed. So we did away with that altogether. But what we had to have was an inventory system that told us what we had when we had, because this customer came in pre-shop, knew what they wanted, and if they came in 20, 40, 50 miles and we didn't have it, they had a right to get upset and not come back. So at the time, we were using, we also were using the manufacturer stock number, which was an alphanumeric number in many cases. And at the time, there was no alphanumeric keyboard on a point of sale system. So we had to develop our own cash register system. So we had a lot of, I call them crazy people, because they came up with crazy ideas. And from those crazy ideas came our great system. So God bless these people. They really, really were out there thinking beyond what anybody else could imagine. And the great thing is, they were such great people, they made everything work. That was what was so amazing. So what we did is we took a printer and a disk drive, hooked a terminal to it, and a cash drawer, and that became our cash register. Then we could have an alphanumeric number. So the customer, for example, the electric knife, when they came out with the electric knife, everybody had an EK1. So GE would call it EK1 GE, Sunbeam would call it EK1 XU, because we didn't want to use S's because it looked like a 5. Anyway, we had all these things down. And so when we developed this cash register, one of the people said, everybody laughed at it first, said, well, why don't we put a terminal in the middle of the floor and the customer can see if we got it before they order it. And somebody said, well, you know, we could have them, and then by the time they order it, 14 other people could have ordered it, we could be out. Why don't we just reserve the item? So they said, well, why don't we just make it a cash register? So from a thought of just checking to see if we had the item in stock for the customer to do it themselves, came the cash register over a period of a couple of hours of discussion. And that's how fast it went. So you could walk up to Silent Sam and key in your order, swipe your credit card, he would print you out a receipt, you went over to the pickup counter, picked up your merchandise, and out the door you went. You could even order jewelry there, even though that was a service department, because we had a particular area where you could go and it would print your receipt. The order would print in the jewelry department. You'd go to this particular one case and pick up your order and go. So you had to go to the pickup counter to get your non-jewelry merchandise, or to the jewelry to get it, but you could pay for it all at one time. So that was quite exciting, and the customers loved it, loved it, loved it. So we had one store that had to have a mall entrance and a parking lot entrance. So we couldn't figure out how to make that work. How were we going to do the customer where we should send the order? So one of the people came over and said, well, we'll take the conveyor belt and paint one red and one green. And we'll ask the customer, you want to pick it up at the mall entrance or the parking lot entrance? And if they check the parking lot, it'll print on a printer in the back with green paper, and we'll put on the green conveyor. And if they check the mall entrance, it'll print on red paper, and it'll pick it up there. And it worked phenomenally. So from these crazy layouts of these stores, our people were so great that they could develop all these wonderful systems to make everything work. Our theory was, give us a building, we'll make a store.
Yeah, you know, thing that kind of reminds me, we always say about distribution centers, if you build it, we will fill it.
That's right. Well, we try to stay away from that. Build it and flow it. Let her rip. Don't let it sit there too long.
You really talked a lot about people, and obviously in the supply chain business, in retail especially, it's all about people. If you were launching service merchandise today, where would you focus from a people perspective?
Well, obviously, since you're talking about distribution, logistics, and all that, the people, I don't know how it is now. I think it's much, much better than it was before. But I know back in my day, these people really didn't have a seat at the table. They were just there to do what everybody else said to do and to cover everybody's mistakes. So today, and then we found out certainly later on, because even the warehouse manager in the store was probably one of the second most crucial person in that building, because they knew more about what was going on in the store, what was happening there, what the problems were, where the hangups were. And they really had to do a better job of managing their people than the jewelry manager or the showroom manager or whatever. So today, if senior management, and I'm talking about from the CEO on down, and even at the board level, if they don't show the appreciation and the confidence in their distribution people, then they're missing a big, big boat, because that is a huge, huge expense saving area. Not necessarily, I hesitate to call it a profit center, but it sure does cut those losses down by a lot. So those people, they really got to have a big voice at the table. The operations people and the merchants, which everybody pays attention to and listen to them, they're no good. They could have the right merchandise, the right price, the stores run well, but if those distribution people don't get the merchandise to the stores in time and the right quantities, then all the rest of it's for naught. So you really got to have a well running machine today, and everybody got to be there to sit at the table, particularly the logistics people.
Yeah, I think that, maybe with everything that's happened over the last 3-4 months, that finally they're getting their day in the sunshine. People have really realized what logistics and supply chain folks can do for a company, and when it breaks, what does that mean? So yeah, hopefully there's better recognition of the value of looking at the supply chain and having the systems and the right people. But with all your experience in the industry and all the various folks you've worked with over the years, what do you see as being some of the biggest challenges for retailers and consumer packaged good type companies today?
Well, you got an awful lot of competition out there, and a lot of people doing a lot of things. So you really got to have a handle on everything you're doing, and you shouldn't try to copy the other guy. You need to create something different than what he's doing, uh, uh, to differentiate yourself from the people that are there. Uh, to copy somebody that's already doing something that's already established, that's a tough road to hoe. So you need to do what you know how to do best, and where you fit in best, and where you can compete with that guy by doing the same thing better, differently, or something to differentiate yourself from what's already out there. So you got to take a hard look. Don't copy anybody. Just innovate from what they're doing. Take what they're doing and improve it. And if you really can't find a better way to improve what they're doing, then do they really need you out there? So what purpose do you serve by being the new guy on the block? Unless you're in a non-competitive area or whatever. But if you want to go into e-commerce, what's going to make you different than the 9 million other people that are out there? What are you going to do differently than the people that are already out there established? And whatever you do, you better have a lot of money to sustain your business, because you're going to have your ups and downs. And certainly this period here, as everybody thought the economy was booming, and they're going to last forever, and on we go. And now, I just don't know how any retailer or restaurant or movie theater can help but filing Chapter 11, because I don't know how they can stay there without having those stores open and those people come in. And then if you take from the Black Fridays on, you're going to have social distancing. How are you going to do those big numbers in those big selling days? I just think it's going to be impossible. So this is a storm you're going to have to weather, and it's going to be a long, long time. So I know the story my father always told me when they started with the 5 and 10 cent store in Pulaski, and it was a Ben Franklin store, and Mr. Waluki was the credit manager. And anytime my folks wanted to do something and I got upset, they would tell me they had to go see Mr. Waluki. So all my life as a kid, I was afraid of credit managers. So one year there was a drought in Pulaski where the store was, and they said they went to see him, told him he couldn't pay, that there was a drought. And they said, young man, to my father, he said, there's going to be something every year. There's going to be a drought, there's going to be a flood. You're going to have too much, too little, whatever. So that's why you got to have that staying power in there to stick around. Don't stretch yourself too thin. Don't plan it down to the last penny. When I'm working at SCORE and with my clients there, and they come with their business plan, I said, don't play games with yourself. Come what you really think is real. And then take 20% off your revenue and add 20% to your expenses. And then if it really works out there, then go for it. If it doesn't, with those conservative numbers, then my advice to you is you need to rethink it, because you don't want to get in trouble and invest everything you've got and lose it all. So you just got to be very careful. You got to know what you're doing, what your costs are, where you're different from another guy, what are you going to do, and have the backup of the funds to support you through the thick and thin.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, I think what you really outlined there is understanding, what your corporate strategy is and your differentiator that you're going to have in the marketplace, and then figuring out how you align your supply chain strategy to that. And, keeping an eye, getting visibility to everything. It kind of reminded me of, you talked about where you compete. And I know everybody, especially in the e-commerce world, is all about competing with Amazon. And well, we've all got to have 2-day delivery. But if you've got 2-day delivery and you're not profitable with that, you've got to understand where you can compete, as opposed to, just blindly trying to follow the leader.
You can't do it. We did that in the wholesale business. We had a competitor in Nashville. He was going up into Missouri and way over into Arkansas and down south to Louisiana. So we thought we could do the same thing. Well, fortunately, he went broke before we got too far invested there. And we said, whoop, maybe that's not so profitable to do that. So don't try to be something that you really haven't planned out and thought out and costed out and know exactly what your costs are down there. So that is, I can't emphasize knowing what your costs are, because if you may be in business to render a service to the community. That was my business class, my first year of college. You're not in business for profit. Which I immediately walked out of. So, but anyway, you are in business to make a living. And you better know what your costs are, or else you're not going to make a living. You're going to lose what you got. So I'm not going to be negative about don't do things. Just know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Doing it just because Joe did it, or this one did it, or that one did it. Just do it because you think it works and the numbers work.
Well, thinking about all, the supply chain folks that are likely on the call right now, what advice would you give them?
the supply chain people. Well, obviously it's a trust issue on both sides, and you've got to be upfront with the good and the bad news. I mean, when the buyers are out there buying all these, ship all these big quantities of things, and you can't get the truckers to haul it, or you can't get it on the boats out of the Orient or Europe or wherever it's coming from, you need to early on know that and get in and say, hey guys, you're killing me. I can't get you the goods. It's going to sit on the water. It's going to sit at the dock. Or it's going to cost us an abnormal amount of money to get it. And make sure that those people that you are serving, because you're serving the merchants, that they understand what the jackpot is that they're getting you into. And in essence, it's going to look bad from them because they've overbought. So then I got to look at the people that couldn't get it there as much as they are. So just be upfront and aggressive and smart about what you're doing, and don't hesitate to go as high up the chain of command as you feel comfortable going, to say, we got a problem and I need somebody to help me get this resolved because they're inundated me with freight I can't handle. I can't flow it through fast enough. I don't have enough warehouse space. I don't have enough personnel. I can't get the trucks. So you really got to be on top of your game, just like everybody else on their game. But yours is far reaching because you got to look at what's going to happen in September and October and March when these buyers are placing those orders for delivery. Then can you move that freight? So it's like I said early on, everybody's got to be working together, but you got to have a lot of foresight and vision, and having done your homework to make sure that you can get the transportation that you need and have the facilities to flow it through or run it through or warehouse it for whatever you're doing.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me back of my days in retail where they actually partnered logistics analysts with the merchandisers to really help them understand the quantities they were buying, how it'd have to be distributed, and so it's kind of set up from the get-go to be successful. And I thought that was a real interesting concept when I got introduced to it. But how brilliant was that?
Yeah, it is. And let's say you also got to work in the planogram department because how many pieces of something does it take to fill a shelf, and how many are they going to sell? So there's a difference in whether you have a case pack or in a pack of 6 or 12 or 24. So if it's a very, very fast selling item, you might want to say, hey, we need to do these in a 24 pack because it costs me the same to pick up a box of 24 as it does a box of 6. So instead of shipping a store 4 boxes of 6, let me ship them 1 box of 24. But if it's a slow seller, well, we don't want to inundate the stores because we don't want that stuff in the back room. We want it all on the floor. So you need to break this down into a 6-pack. So it's going to cost me more money to run through the warehouse, but it's going to help the stores out and everybody, and it's going to help you out. You got to show me your customer. And if you're in logistics, your customer is that merchant and those stores. So you got to show them where what you want them to do or what you recommend they do or think is best has a return for them. Mm-hmm. So just can't shove something down their throat and do this. Y'all got to be joined at the hip, working in sync to make sure that everything that can be done gets done.
Yeah, I know they always encouraged us, I was in the logistics area, but always getting out to the store, working in the store, see what, we're doing, how it impacts and what they have to deal with. And I don't think there's any experience that'd be better than seeing how your end customer, for us, the store, was handling everything we were doing. And I think that was just great perspective and a great practice for a retailer.
And one of the biggest part of your job is explaining to these merchants what this merchandise costs in the store, not FOB China or the Orient, but what it costs with the ocean freight, with the duty, with the warehousing, and this, that, and the other. I remember back in the days that we had a group that printed this catalog together, and O'Sullivan, who made the ready-to-assemble furniture, used to be in truckloads prepaid. So they were charging like $20 for something. So then they said, well, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to charge you 18 FOB factory. Well, all the merchants thought they're going to make that extra 10%. Figure that it cost 25%, that it landed them at $22.50 instead of $22, instead of $20. So they had a 12% price increase, but they thought they had a 10% price decrease because they didn't think about the freight. And but later on in life, we had to open these dollar stores. So we went to China and we had a 2-quart pitcher and a 3-quart pitcher. One costs 35 cents and one costs 45 cents. So they said, well, let's just buy the 3-quart. I said, no, we can't buy the 3-quart because we were selling everything for $1. And I said, what is it going to land you at? What's the landed cost? 94 cents. The freight was more than the pitcher. So, you know, you can't buy that item. You lose money every time you sell one. And that's just the freight to the US. That doesn't include going through the warehouse back to the stores and everything. So merchants have no idea about what freight is, what something costs to handle them and this. And then you got to look at what's the return factor, what's the package in the stores, you know, because I would assume that part of yours is the damage and defective or returns or whatever. And you see what the credits that you're asking for, the bad stuff. Well, that's got to be figured into your costs. It costs you a lot of money to sell something. That's great. And then when it comes back and you got to do something with it, that becomes very, very expensive. That's why so many people today say, just keep it, we'll send you another one. The cost of handling it is more than the cost of the product. So that's all part of your job to explain that and work with the merchants and the store people on that. You know, that's what makes retail interesting, and regardless of what area you're in, or any business really, whether it's manufacturing or whatever. Arrive time inventory, that's great if it works, but you better have some backup stock in case it doesn't, because you're building a car and you're missing one little screw, you can't complete that car. So, you know, in the apparel business, you don't have the blouse to match the skirt. And you don't get the blouse into the end of the season, your skirts, you're on markdown because you couldn't make the set. I mean, it's on and on and on, and that's why everybody got to work together and everybody got to help the other guy do their job. So that's what makes life interesting. I tell you.
Yeah, I tell you, I mean, you know, really thinking about that landed cost, you know, what is that landed cost? Because there are so many trade-offs as you're going back up the supply chain, whether it's domestically sourced, internationally sourced, your cost of inventory, all of that, you know, really kind of ties into everything. But at the end of the day, it's what does it cost you at the point you're getting it to your customer?
And how long is it going to sit in that DC? You know, like we used to go to Toy Show in November, in the first week in December. Mattel and Hasbro used to have the buyers come and they would go over next year's line, what was going to be dropped and what was not. So they would start shipping in December with next December. You didn't pay for it till next December. Because they were in essence buying your warehouse space. They had it in their warehouse. They needed to get rid of it. Well, the great thing about that was we used to fly in a lot of stuff. I know the week before Christmas, we got in one year, we got in like 18,000 Barbie dolls. But we had the system, and we shipped them to each store, air freight. So we didn't make a lot of money. I don't know if we made any or not, but the week of Christmas, we had Barbie dolls in our stores that nobody else had. But we can only do that because of the system. So we got to use that money for a year, which was great. But you know, we were doing them a favor, they were doing us a favor, and we just became the big beneficiary of that favor. So, you know, but those things you really got to be on top of, and some merchants got to be able to go to some logistic person and say, look, I can get this item. I may have to fly it in. What's it going to cost me to fly it in? What's it going to do? Can I get there in time? Can you get it on the plane? Can you do this? So that's, again, all part of working together and having a great, well-functioning, smooth-running machine.
So, you know, you've been around the retail industry, obviously, for a long time. What's some of your favorite memories or some of the craziest things you've seen?
Well, we when Cabbage Patch was so hot, we were opening the Hickory Hollow store, as a matter of fact. So we saved up a few thousand Cabbage Patch dolls for that store. And everybody in town knew that we were going to have these Cabbage Patch dolls because I don't know how the word got out, but our competitors were telling everybody they're going to have Cabbage Patch. So we have the grand opening of the store, and it was such a rainstorm. It was incredible. I said, nobody's going to come to this opening. And I pull up to the store about 8 o'clock for 9 o'clock opening in the morning, and there was no place to park. The parking lot was full, overflowing. I pulled into the loading zone between two trailers, and I ran into the loading dock. And at 9 o'clock, and the people lined up too deep around the building. And at 9 o'clock, the doors open, and everybody goes in the store, turns to the left. And what we were doing is the door to the stock room, we had them all stacked up there. And you came in, and we handed you 2 Cabbage Patch dolls. And it didn't matter. You got a boy and a girl, a green, a yellow, whatever. And then there was a trade show going on, a swap shop. Everybody was swapping their cabbage. I'll give you these 2 if you give me that one, or I'll give you this one for that one. It was crazy. And I looked, and it was 9:22 before we rang up the first sale. So we had a huge day in volume, but it was all Cabbage Patch dolls until we ran out. But you know, it's things like that, and everybody loved it, and people are still talking about it because we have these service merchandise Facebook groups, and my assistant Kelly, she sends out all these notes. What was your favorite experience there? What was this? And so invariably, half the people will talk about having the Cabbage Patch dolls to rush. So it was funny. We used to forbid the employees from buying those hot items because they would buy them all and take them and take them to the swap shops that do this and the other, or hold them back for their friends or whatever, and make a big profit. But we wanted them for our customers. So we had a lot of terminations of people that didn't follow the rules and were buying all these Cabbage Patch dolls. But that stopped. There wasn't that many items, but it was just an idea. And a friend of mine's child works at Target, and they're not allowed, or weren't allowed, to buy handy wipes and Purell and all that stuff. That toilet paper, that was all for the customers. Employees were not allowed to buy it at Target. But I guess that's over now. I don't know, all the hoarding.
I hope so. I mean,
There's a Sam's Club about 20 miles from us that they closed. And I keep kidding my wife. I said, I'm going to rent that building if you don't quit buying all this stuff. we got enough toilet paper for the rest of our lives.
So was the Cabbage Patch, was that the hottest toy you ever sold?
I'm sorry, what?
Was the Cabbage Patch, was that the hottest toy you ever sold?
No, the hottest toy we ever had. There were a lot of hot toys, you know. Barbie in its day, Chatty Cathy doll, the hottest thing we ever had back when we were in the wholesale business was the hula hoop, and we were selling. We were just a small little wholesaler doing $1 million a year or something like that, and we were selling 3 truckloads a week. We weren't selling anything else but hula hoops, and the truck would come in early in the morning, and I would go down and we'd start unloading them and start filling the orders and shipping them out. And nothing prettier than looking at that truck with all those beautiful, different colored hula hoops in there. And then even prettier was that night where the truck was empty and pulled away, and the loading dock was empty because it had all been shipped out. but hula hoops was probably the #1 hottest toy I guess that we ever had. It was unbelievable. And the price started out, I think it was $2.98, $3 retail. Then it dropped. Finally, it got down to 99 cents. But everybody was making them in the garage. The salesman came in from Whammo and took 6 dozen for a prepaid order. So I bought the 6 dozen. And before they ever came in, we had gone through, I don't know how many truckloads, because all the garden hose manufacturers started making them. And then one day I'm on the phone calling everybody I can think of to buy hoops. And my assistant keeps coming in with this man, wants to talk to me. Finally, after about 5:30, I call him and he said, I'm around the corner from you and I'm making hula hoops. So I dashed over there with our office manager, and they looked at what he was doing. He said, go down the street to the old used auto parts store, whatever, and go buy a tire. So he brought him back a tire, and he did boom, and he doubled his production like that. I mean, it was crazy. But when it died, it died. It was dead.
I tell you, that really, there are aspects of that really, a lot of what's going on today, is, some companies ended up with categorized as non-essential products. And then there's this scramble to, okay, how do I make some of these essential products that there's so much demand for? And so, a lot of ingenuity and, being agile with the supply chain and the products that they're producing to take advantage of opportunities for demand.
It's all swag. You go to Toy Show in February, I guess it is now, and you see all these toys. You don't know what's going to sell and what's not going to sell. So you make a educated guess. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. If you win, the great thing about retail, if you got something that's really hot, you give it away. You see how cheap you can sell it. And if it's not so hot, you got to mark it down. So I remember from Rimco, they had that little red spinning wheel, and we were selling the 2 department stores, and we were back in the wholesale business, and we were selling them to them, and they got in a price war. So we had maybe 24 dozen that we had shipped them, 12 dozen, I think, to each. And after Christmas, they had each sold 800, 900 pieces, because when it started out at like $5.95 something, and wound up at $2.99 retail, something like that. They would lower the prices, and every time one would lower the price, the other one would go over and buy them all. So they went back and forth, back and forth. We would sell the Relco razors. We had a count, Evansville store in Evansville, Indiana, and we were charging him $16.22 for the razor, and he was selling $24.95. And for years, we'd been selling $144 a year. And we opened the store in Evansville. So I called him the next year, and I said, listen, I'm here for your razor order. He said, I still got them all left. He said, in fact, I got more than I bought. I said, how can that happen? He said, because they bought them from your store and brought them back to us for a refund. Because we were selling to the consumer at the same price, $16.22. So I mean, it's crazy out there.
Oh, I tell you. I mean, I mean, yeah, thinking about that, the whole returns piece, how do you manage the returns and, customers, I always say people are really smart at trying to figure out the craziest way to make a buck. And so, how, they'll bring back in the returns at this store or that store. And I can't imagine how hard it must have been back in the day just to keep it straight. Did they really buy this here?
Well, our system, we kept the records of everything that was sold for, I think, 6 months. So we had all, and I think Walmart does this. I think a lot of people have that. A lot of stores have, you can't return it without a receipt. But the most successful guy of his day could return it anytime. I had a cousin that worked at Sears, and I was in the store one day talking to him, and fella brought back in a pair of work shoes that you obviously were worn out. And I mean, God knows how long, how old they were. And he told them, he said they didn't fit. I didn't like them. So they said, well, we'll give you a new pair. And they said, fine. Gave a new pair. But with Sears, those sales were final, and there was nobody more successful than Sears in their day. They were unbelievable. Yeah.
So, the time of service merchandise kind of started to wind down. What were really the factors that were affecting you back then?
You mean, why they go out of business?
Yeah.
I would like to say because I left, but that's not true. No, I woke up one day 10 years before I left, and I said, it's time for me to get out of here. And I think founders stick along, and CEOs stick around too long, and the business needed to change. And every time people would want to do something, it would go all the way through, come to me, and I would really stop it. And I went, no, that doesn't work, this, that, the other. And then I said, it's time for you to get out of here. So it took me 10 years to find somebody that I thought understood the business. I talked to every department store, regional VP, president, all the discounters, regional managers, district managers, everybody. I'm not knocking them, please, please, please. They were far more successful than we were, but every one of them knew what they would change, but they didn't know why they were going to change it. we were a different animal than they were, and they didn't understand this business. So what happened was, as the regional aspect of our business, we wanted to be by every mall, and that didn't work after a while because you had all the discounters and everybody and the online guys coming in and could serve better the local community. So we tested a 1,000-square-foot store in Cookeville, Tennessee, which was halfway between Nashville and Knoxville. And all we had was a order desk there. And you could go in and order, and we had 3 trucks going through Cookeville every night, going into the Carolinas or going over to Knoxville, wherever. And we would drop it off there at 4 o'clock in the morning, and the customer would come pick up the next day. Well, that little store did $1 million with zero inventory. And so then we started playing around, and then we opened in that mall. It happened to be in a mall, and then we opened a 7,000-square-foot store, and we had a full jewelry department. And that little guy did $3.5 million. So it proved that we need to be closer to the customer. Then we started downsizing the big stores and opening more of these little stores, and then time just ran out on the new team that they couldn't do it fast enough, and those big stores, markets changed. And 10, 12 years ago, I went through a list of all the stores, and half of them would have been gone, changing markets. If we were opening a store in Nashville today, I would not know where to put it. There's only Cool Springs, you would put one, and then where else in Nashville? I don't know. The regional draws are gone. There's all these local draws, and so it had to be a different concept, and time just ran out of them before they could change enough of them.
Yeah, I think, that kind of ties back to one of the early comments you made today around, knowing what your differentiator is in the market, and then, but having a good eye on what's changing in the market and being a little agile to be able to take advantage of it.
If they could have stuck in a little bit longer, then it would have been a great acquisition for Amazon. With Whole Food, now they're talking to Penny. We had all those things. They just weren't there early enough to take us over and do what they wanted to do, because we would have been a much better fit for them, I think, than Penny would be. I don't know.
Well,
they'll figure it out. No, it's going to be a bidding war for Penny, I guess. Everybody wants.
I was going to be crazy.
Anyway, the company needed to change. I didn't let them change fast enough and do enough things. Then when they did started changing, obviously they didn't do everything wrong. They didn't do everything right. So what happened, you can debate forever and ever and ever. But would the concept work today? I think so. I think so on a small store basis.
Well, and I think, that's one thing that a lot of retailers are trying to figure out right now is, all the brick and mortar, all the inventory everywhere. How do I leverage that to satisfy all these different channels that customers are expecting today? And I think, going way back, you already had that figured out, how to do that.
Yeah, we were doing it. Yeah.
It's great.
A big problem I had, you can have the hottest item in the catalog, and if you didn't repeat that item in the catalog the next year, because the manufacturer changed it or they dropped it or whatever, forget it, it was dead. So how do you get rid, and this is a big problem out there, why you need to keep those inventories low and turn them, is how do you get rid of all that inventory? So here we had last year's blender and this year's blender. So we had 10 blenders. We probably wound up with 15 blenders, 5 of which were discontinued. So how do you get rid of that? So we needed the space on the sales floor. We also needed the space in the back room. And then probably the most important, we needed the money. Inventory. So I went to all the home, there were 4 home shopping guys at the time. And I said, listen, I got this inventory, you put it on TV and we'll ship it. And they said, well, ship it to our warehouse and we'll do it. And the reason nobody would do it with us, and I promised them that we had the systems to do it, just give us a try, was because they had Craftsman tools on there. And whoever was fulfilling for Sears did such a miserable job that they all said, if it's not in our warehouse, it's not going on the air, which was, I thought, pretty smart, but I still wanted to get rid of that inventory. So this was the beginning of the internet. So one day I walked into, it happened to be a camera and electronics meeting, planning a merchandise meeting, and I said, I need the 30th worst items we got, and I only need 3 or 4 pieces. And they said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, we're going to put it on the internet. And half the people in there said, well, what is that? I said, I don't know, but we'll figure it out. So our plan was to put up these 30 pieces at a ridiculous price, and then every day reduce one of them 25% just to get rid of them and see what the internet was going to be like, and see if we weren't in the beginning of something. So then the tragic part was I went down to the IT department and told them what I wanted to do. And what was said, half of them said, what is that? I said, I don't know, we'll figure it out. Anyway, we did, we put it up. And then there was the discussion, do we just put up the stuff that's not in the catalog, or do we put up the catalog stuff? So somebody said, well, just put up what's not in the catalog, everybody got a catalog. And then somebody said, well, you put up the whole catalog, what difference does it make how they order? Well, I was 1,000% right. We didn't sell anything. This was at the very beginning of the internet, because people weren't ordering on the internet. They certainly weren't going to buy the worst merchandise that you had. But it was the very beginning. So at the end, when they did the liquidation, we had 22 million snail mail names, and I think 700,000 email names of customers. So this was in 2002, we had a mailing list of 700,000 people that had bought via the internet over the period of time. So which in those days was a lot, yeah. So it was there from the very beginning. But if it was out there, we didn't have a lot to do except for Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, and Thanksgiving and Christmas. It was kind of slow because we didn't do a lot of business. So we had a lot of time to think and plan and do. So that's why we could be so innovative and creative, because these people were looking for things that could help them out. And we did have some wild ideas of things people wanted to do. And most of them worked out. We had very, very few things that we tried that didn't work. We had great people. Our people were so fabulous and so dedicated and committed. And it's like a family. And even today, I still send birthday cards to maybe 3,500 people. There's probably 25 different service merchandise Facebooks. There's one for Distribution Center 967. There's one for Dallas. The Orland Park, Illinois store has a website. So there's all these service merchandise groups, and they all talk to each other, and they get together, which is wonderful, wonderful. And now I would like to post this so all these people can see all these nice things that I said from the heart about them.
That's great. I tell you, Raymond, this has been a fantastic opportunity. Thank you so much for joining us and taking us on this walk down memory lane and really sharing your insights around the importance of the supply chain and how that made service merchandise successful. So today we've been discussing strategies for delivering a service merchandise experience. For more information on how these retail strategies can help you improve performance, download our resource guide, Prime Before It's Time, the service merchandise experience, at our website at transportationinsight.com. It offers additional insights for some of these lessons retailers can learn to deliver service experience for the customers today. On behalf of Raymond Zimmerman and everyone at Transportation Insight, thank you for joining us today for our presentation.